Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash.
After weeks of speculation, we had a dramatic conservative floor crossing to the Liberals. We had a resignation. On Monday, the Carney government squeaked its budget through by just 2 votes, a survival move in a minority parliament. The Greens backed it. A handful of NDP MPs quietly abstained, and the Conservatives continued to hammer the Liberals for the spending. But the result? No election for now.
Yay!
A deficit on the table and a clear signal that Ottawa is betting big on housing, defense, and shielding Canada from Trump's tariffs, even if the political knives are out. Okay, Elizabeth May. I mean, I have to go back because a few weeks ago you were stomping on this budget. It was pretty clear that you were not going to vote for it. You ended up holding some of the balance of power. You voted for the budget. Tell us what happened in the weeks leading up to this really historic budget vote.
Well, thanks, Amanda. Let me just go back and say, when you look at the votes, because I'm getting phone calls from irate conservatives, call your leader's office because also
Why are
conservatives
you getting
abstained.
calls?
No,
Yes.
I'm getting a lot, but
Wow.
only from people. Yeah, never mind. I get a lot of calls thanking me, and the calls that are really angry are conservative voters. So I like to remind them, if all the conservatives had voted no, the budget wouldn't have carried. They abstained too. So you mentioned a handful of NDPers abstained, a handful of conservatives
You're
abstained.
right.
And I was dealing with I still think that the budget as written, as read on November 4th, could not have been supported. And I said on November 4th, immediately after the budget was introduced into the House by the finance minister, that I could not support the budget unless I got changes. There were a lot of things missing. I was appalled. The Paris Agreement wasn't mentioned in the budget. Commitments to nature weren't mentioned in the budget. I listed the things I was concerned about, but I said I'm willing to talk, open to conversation. It's a minority parliament, and for parliament to work, we have to be able to talk to each other and try to find compromise. And I did that pretty much nonstop between November 4th and right up through November 17th, noonish. I still didn't know how I was going to vote,
Whoa.
but it's important in a minority parliament that we try to work together. So I think, I mean, I was the only party leader who kept trying to open channels to say, what could we do to get my no to a yes? Because all things considered, and I heard loud and clear, at least from my constituents, the overwhelming message was, we don't want an election.
Yeah.
Hold your nose and vote yes. We know you don't like the budget. Hold your nose and vote yes. So I wasn't prepared to vote yes without achieving substantial commitments that would address the large gaps in what was in that budget for 3 key baskets of issues around the climate crisis and meeting our Paris commitments, around Indigenous reconciliation, and what we generally call the nature agenda, the promises that Canada made at the COP15 for biodiversity in Montreal.
Can you walk us through? So, for the person listening that is hearing that you had all these negotiations, what does that mean? Like, were you texting with Mark Carney?
Oh,
Or
it's a riot. Honestly, Rachel, okay, so it was chaotic. It wasn't organized in any sense that was clear. So I've been around a long time. So most of the people that I was talking with, I mean, I've known Mark Carney since he was governor of the Bank of Canada,
Right.
but we're not talking all the time, obviously. Um, and I've known a number of the cabinet ministers a really long time. I know most of the people in Parliament for all kinds of reasons that predate when I was in politics. I didn't join a political party till I was over 50. I'm not a career politician type person, but I've had, for different reasons, I know a lot of people. So when I said, look, I want to work to find compromise, for one thing, and I hope it's true, I think it's true that people know my reputation, that I'm telling the truth when I say I want to work to find a solution here. I knew overwhelmingly that Canadians didn't want to have an election right away. For the Green Party, we had some strong voices for let's go to an election right away.
Mm.
We're going to do better right away. We're better prepared. Anyway. But what I heard from the Canadian public was we don't want an election. And you said the balance of power. The Greens have always understood this as a position of the balance of responsibility,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
is a very different frame from the balance of power.
It's true.
We know that when we make a difference in Parliament with more Green MPs elected, it's because we have more influence and we use our influence to try to achieve better results where there's more cooperation and less nastiness, less just partisan sniping for the heck of it. So I went into this with other members of the party who were, like Mike Morris, who's our candidate in Kitchener Centre, who was the member of Parliament Kitchener Centre, much loved and will get reelected. But we're looking at what do we do? So I start the negotiations the night of November 4th. I start talking right away to certain ministers who say, how fast can you get me? Can you actually put it in writing what you'd like to see? So I go fast, and I do. And then I share that out with a lot of Greens on email and say, confidential, because you really don't want a leak of what you're proposing to the government all over the place.
Right.
But you take your chances, you write emails. I've been very fortunate since November 4th, nothing I wrote to someone privately ended up on Twitter. So you
Wow.
end up, you move, and saying, would this be possible? Would that be possible? It went nonstop. I mean, to the final moments of this, which I haven't shared publicly with anyone, it was just such a ride because I thought I had maybe a good idea worked up with some of the Prime Minister's staff and some of the ministers that, okay, well, that could work. What do you think? So this is on Sunday afternoon. Saying,
Wow.
okay, well, that was a good idea. What do you think? And everybody's saying, well, I like that idea, and I like that idea. This is coming from various, and that's it. Well, has the Prime Minister seen this idea yet? Oh, we can't ask him because he's at the Grey Cup.
Oh no!
Gosh.
Really?
Yeah, really. So I'm like, okay, I have a really new interest in football. I'm turning on the TV because I need to know when he leaves the stadium in Winnipeg and watching Grey Cup. Will the Prime Minister look at whatever messages he's been sent?
That's so
By
funny.
the time I go into Parliament Monday morning, I still don't know if the plan we
Wow.
had been cooking up for days, the Prime Minister's as Deputy Chief of Staff and the Minister responsible and the Finance Minister and the Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, Minister of Heritage, well, now called Minister of Canadian Identity. And I don't know if this is all going to come together or not. And I don't know. And then they're saying, various people are all writing me saying, well, no, we like this idea. And some backbencher liberals who are also friends who are really worried and didn't want an election saying, okay, it looks good to us, but so we're waiting. I'm getting the most I had before Monday morning when I'm walking the house is one person writing me fingers crossed, and then another person sending me a smiley face emoji. And I'm thinking,
Come on.
yeah, really, for real.
What?
Yeah, I was saying, okay. So, and I had to go through all the scenarios with the Green Party
Right.
communications people and and the people from Shadow Cabinet who'd been helping me all the way along with we can't support this budget with nothing in our hands to show that we used the limited amount of influence that we had, which grew over time as it looked like more and more like this could be a tie vote. Okay, we use the balance of responsibility. Is this enough to vote yes? We went through 3 scenarios Monday morning where I said to my staff, okay, so team, not really staff, a lot of us, okay, one thing could happen is I walk into Parliament and it turns out I don't have a question in question period at all. Because obviously you could see from the way that worked that I asked a question in question period and the Prime Minister stood to answer me. Did you notice how many people booed the minute they saw him stand up?
Wow.
They interrupted him with such loud booing from the Conservative benches because anyone who watches Parliament every day knows the Prime Minister doesn't stand up to answer Elizabeth May's questions.
Interesting.
He only stands up to answer questions to Pierre Poilievre or Yves-François Blanchet because they are leaders of parties that have more than 12 MPs,
Right.
obviously.
Have status.
So the Prime Minister doesn't stand up to answer the interim leader of the NDP, Don Davies' questions, nor because they're not a recognized party now. They used to be.
Right.
Things
Right.
go up and down. There was a while when the Conservatives weren't a recognized party. Things change.
Mhm.
So in any case, to give you the drama feel, like I'm walking, I'm
Love the
telling
drama.
my team, I might vote no, I might vote yes, I might abstain. It all depends on if. So different scenarios. If I get a question in question period, and if the question is answered, the prime minister, I'll say, ma question s'adresse le premier ministre. I'm going to ask, this question is to the prime minister. And then if he stands up to answer it, it's a very different scenario for me than
Yeah.
if a parliamentary secretary stands up to answer it.
For
Or
sure.
another, so anyway, go through the whole thing. You know how it went. At, and I was waiting and watching, just holding my breath because I didn't know.
Wow, that's crazy.
So the prime minister stood up to answer my question. And then again, I still didn't know, is he going to give a really bad answer, or is he so interrupted by heckling that he won't remember what I asked? I mean, it was bad, the heckling.
Wow.
So in the end, he got a second chance to answer the question because he couldn't hear himself think, and the speaker couldn't hear him.
Mm.
So the speaker had to say, I'm going to have to ask the prime minister to take it from the top. Couldn't hear your answer because, and please, all of the others who are not supposed to be speaking now, don't speak. They weren't entirely quiet. But in any case, the prime minister's answer gave me what I needed,
Which
which
was?
was to say he committed that Canada will work to achieve our targets under the Paris Agreement. Bear in mind, the
Mm.
Paris Agreement wasn't mentioned in the
Right.
budget at all. And it wasn't mentioned in the speech from the throne either, which made me really, I mean, the combination of various big public statements from the prime minister and his administration have been like silent on
Mm.
Paris Agreement and silent on commitments to protect and preserve natural spaces in Canada, terrestrial and marine, and had not said much about Indigenous reconciliation. There's a lot of things I would have liked to have seen mentioned more. I mean, like some parts of the budget I liked, like the National School Lunch Program
Mhm.
being instituted was a good thing.
Yeah.
But I really didn't like a lot of the other stuff. So you take the good with the bad sometimes
Yeah.
with a document like the budget, and you're voting confidence in the government or not. But I hadn't voted confidence in a Liberal budget since Justin Trudeau bought the Kinder Morgan pipeline.
Right.
So whereas the NDP were in a deal with Trudeau and they propped up the government every time,
Mm.
I wasn't that. I hadn't so-called. I hadn't voted confidence in the Trudeau budgets since they wasted $30 billion on the pipeline that, by the way, I got arrested fighting. So never mind.
I remember that with
Yeah.
Kennedy Stewart, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Former mayor of
March
Vancouver.
Yeah, well, he was at that point the future mayor of Vancouver.
That's right.
When Kennedy got arrested with me, we were both members of parliament, and it was nice having moral support. We stood there arm in arm, and there'd been a bunch of elected officials in BC who had signed a pledge to the Musqueam Tsleil-Waututh that we were going to, and a number of First Nations had called on us to say, if you're called upon, will you get arrested in opposing the Kinder Morgan pipeline? So,
did.
yeah, we said we would, and we were the only two who showed up out of a much longer list. So anyway, that was all feels so many years ago, March 2018,
Can I
before it became something that we wasted public money building.
can I put that on the record? Okay. Can I ask you about this confidence? You said you haven't voted confidence since the Trudeau bought the pipeline. Do you feel today, a couple of days post vote, that you have confidence in the budget? Because there were other.
I have no confidence in the budget. I
Interesting.
voted confidence in the government.
In the government.
So did the government hold the confidence of the House? So I voted in favor of a budget that I mostly don't like. I'm hoping that many of the things in the budget just fall flat and fail because there's no private sector support and they just won't go anywhere. But we'll see. I mean, that's starting to break apart the budget. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Rachel. What you were saying, do I feel confidence in the government and my vote?
There was a bunch of of measures in that budget that some might say wouldn't align with the priorities of the Green Party. For example, stopping the tree planting program, emissions caps, issues. Do you today still feel, I mean, I guess you answered that you don't feel, why do you not feel confident in the government? Why do you feel confident in the government, but not the budget that they presented? And
Well,
was there
yeah.
anything else that was promised to you aside from those Paris targets?
Well, I've got a slush fund in Switzerland now, so that's good. Sorry, that's just a joke. Sorry. My husband has wanted to sue me for breach of promise since we got married.
Oh my
We got
God, that
married
was
in
really funny.
2019, and he said, "Honey, how'd I marry a politician who doesn't have a slush fund? I want to sue you for breach of promise." Anyway, no, I was promised nothing personally, obviously.
Mm.
What I was voting on with a lot of things on my mind as grave responsibilities. So within the Green Party, and I get a sense, Rachel, that you've got a sense for British Columbia stuff because you actually remember that about Kinder Morgan.
Yeah.
When Adam Olson, who's Sartlip First Nation, was leader of the Green Party of British Columbia, and said, it's not that we have the balance of power, we have the balance of responsibility. And that's how I sit with it. So at one point on Sunday, I had a reporter call me and say, "You realize the current vote count, as far as he could figure out, was 171 votes yes and 171 votes no."
Wow.
So where's the balance of responsibility? I knew overwhelmingly from my own constituents, and I work for my constituents. My view of what the job of a member of parliament isn't to vote to work for their political party or their leader. The job of an MP is to work for and try to align how you vote with what your constituents want. Overwhelmingly, I knew my constituents had let me know they didn't want an election. I had people leaving voicemail saying, "Just hold your nose and vote yes." And the way the Elections Act worked now, by the way, I don't know how many people know this. If we had an election from the vote on Monday, it would have, by law, had to have been either December 26th or January 3rd.
Yep.
Imagine. So that was on my mind, but I wasn't going to vote for something I couldn't believe in without something in my hands that I could say, particularly as a new grandmother. My granddaughter just turned 1. I am terrified. I mean, I shouldn't say this out loud on podcast, but the threat of the climate crisis literally scares me to death. That before my granddaughter is my age, there won't be a world to live in. That's kind of the worst case scenario, but I feel a very strong obligation to make sure that while we have time, and we do have time, it's not too late, we avert the worst to ensure a habitable biosphere for the 10 million other species who live on this planet with us and our own kids and grandkids. That's, for me, my moral obligation as a grown-up. I have to do that. And so that's weighing on my mind. So do I have confidence that I achieved enough to have voted the way I did? Yes. Because the other thing I believe in is that Canadians we're much more forgiving and understanding and respectful of each other than the kind of icky, noxious politics that we see south of the border. So do I think that Mark Carney, our prime minister, is going to absolutely live up to his word and I can trust that with a blank check? Honestly, no. But I have to give him a chance. And he's made, for the first time, and this is important to underscore for me, that was the Monday afternoon answering my question in question period, was the first time the Right Honorable Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, he'd said it earlier as a private citizen, but the first time he'd said it as a Prime Minister, Canada is committed to the Paris Agreement and achieving its targets. And we're committed to the nature agenda and Indigenous reconciliation. We'll work towards those. Is that, do I go away happy, skipping and saying, well, that's it, that's over now? We can count on him to achieve it, to live up to his promises? No, but I have hope that in a minority parliament, if we keep working together, and I mean all of us, all parties, because I know I have friends everywhere, and I've got dear friends, Conservatives, dear friends, NDP, Bloc, all of us, at the very most basic level of who we are, we're neighbors, we're Canadians, we care about each other. We don't want, if we can avoid bad things happening, we have to drop the partisan garbage and work together. And that's especially true in a minority parliament.
I'm curious about this tension between what I think the country wanted, this idea of not going to an election, but also what your constituents as part of your party wanted from a policy perspective. You talked about that. Like, you know, you're weighing this option. Even the morning of, you weren't sure which way you were going to vote, which is so fascinating. But I guess my takeaway is if the country doesn't want an election, isn't the true, like the flip of that coin is that they're not so opposed to this budget? Like there's enough in this budget to keep the country happy. They want this government to keep moving forward with what they elected 7 months ago. Did you get that sense as well?
Well, yeah, but it's very split because this is an unprecedented deficit. Other than in COVID, we've never gone into a budget that says we're going to spend $78 billion more than we take in. Now, we had as Greens, and I'd advocated to the government earlier, much earlier in August. Look, this was our platform. We had it costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office, and we had, of all the federal political parties, the fastest reduction of deficit of any of the parties. When we did that, not by cost cutting only, we did have some cost cutting, but by looking for places where the government can get more revenue without pinching the pockets of the average Canadian. So I'll just give you one example of a great idea I wish the government had used, but they didn't, which is if we put a 20 cents tax on every $100 of stock market transactions, so 0.2% of a financial transaction tax, that would give the government $56 billion by 2030. Now, that's not small change, and it's not something that would affect the affordability crisis. So there's reasons that Canadians will say, I know a lot of conservatives will say, I hate this budget. And not just Albertans, people who are looking at the financial viability of the country don't like to see big deficits. Neither do Greens. But on balance, you've also got, and I really sympathize with this government, what the heck do you do with a Donald Trump? You've got a president of our biggest trading partner who clearly doesn't understand trade or economics or the relationship. And the more he brings in the tariffs, inflation's going up for his voting base and his citizens. But at the same time, he's savaging economies on little tiny poverty-stricken countries like Lesotho in Africa. I've been involved with a lot of different wonderful groups. Like, I don't know if Bracelet of Hope in Guelph, where our candidate there, Anne-Marie Zedlik, is the founder of Bracelet of Hope in Lesotho, a country that's so, oh God, it's just so poor and has such a high rate of HIV/AIDS. And Trump puts tariffs on Lesotho. So, okay, obviously, I think Donald Trump is a menace, but he's put tariffs on us that are illegal and unjustified. What do we do? So I sympathize with the prime minister. I wouldn't have chosen those same tools or that same approach, but I think a lot of Canadians, for the same reason that I feel, okay, take a breath, wait a minute. We're Team Canada. We got to hang on. We got to give it some time, see what works, see what sticks, and hope that we get through this, which we will get through. I'm absolutely confident Canadians can get through anything. Elbows up. Don't visit the U.S. All of those great things that we do as individuals. Keep on doing it.
And now a word from our title sponsor, DoorDash. Season 3 of Beyond a Ballot is powered by DoorDash. Just like we go beyond politics, DoorDash goes beyond delivery, investing in people, stories, and communities across Canada. As financial well-being is top of mind for many Canadians, 68% of Dashers say that dashing helps them meet their financial needs. For Sandra, a Dasher from Quebec City, dashing gives her the flexibility to earn extra income while building her own small business. With the ability to choose her own hours, Sandra's able to supplement her income while continuing to work her other job, providing early childhood support for families in her community. Sandra values having control over when and how she works. Dashing gives her the financial stability and peace of mind she needs. Can I ask you? You touched a little bit about on your granddaughter, and congratulations on her first birthday.
Yeah.
But you talked about the climate crisis and the impact on the next generation. But when we talk about this record deficit, which you spoke about also, how do you rationalize voting for the budget when we're thinking about the next generation in terms of that record multi-generational debt that we are looking
Yeah.
at?
And that's exactly what I asked the Prime Minister, and his answer is why I could vote yes. Because I said, this budget has a very high deficit, but what about the ecological deficit? What about the intergenerational cost of an ecological deficit with nature in crisis, the planet's on fire? And so when the Prime Minister responded very clearly by saying, this government is committed to the Paris Agreement, we're committed to achieving its objectives, and we are committed to the nature agenda. As I said, that's the first time he said those things. So yeah, no question, there's some inconsistencies. I think there is a path to navigate through all the things I don't like in that budget and still have a plan that reaches our Paris targets. If I didn't think that was possible, I would be in some sort of internal turmoil. Right now, I'm really feeling a strong sense of hope and feel really rooted that through love of country and love of planet, and Canadians have an amazing resilience and willing to look after each other.
Yeah.
I don't want to digress more than I usually digress, but I compare what happened in New Orleans and Hurricane Katrina in 2005 with what happened in Fort McMurray with the Beast, and you compare what kind of a benefit we had that we don't even name or celebrate of our social cohesion, of taking care of everybody takes care of each other. Every single person in Fort McMurray, thanks to first responders and the cops that stayed there along the side of the road to make sure everybody could get out going south with two lanes running and the fire all around. And in Hurricane Katrina in 2005, about a third of the New Orleans Police Department left in their own cars before the dikes burst.
Wow.
I have so much confidence and trust and faith in who we are as Canadians. So sometimes in climate emergencies, there's no question in my own community. And when we had 619 British Columbians die in 4 days in 2021, it's not like this is a future threat.
Yeah,
it's here.
Totally.
But in climate emergencies, a lot of times what people realize is, oh, no one's coming. You can dial 911, but nobody's coming. We're going to be able to take care of each other and we're going to be able to save ourselves. But we have to work right now with every ounce of our strength to reduce greenhouse gases as fast as possible and train up volunteers and know our neighbors and have whatever it takes, phone trees or networks. Who's the most vulnerable person who lives near me? I'm going to have to go look after that person if there's a forest fire too close to us or a heat dome or a windstorm. That's what's going to get us through is each other.
I want to go back to Monday's vote, and I watched it with great interest, and I noticed something when you stood up. You kind of took a breath before you stood. What were you thinking in that moment? The Prime Minister had obviously answered your question, made you feel better about voting in favor of this budget, but there was a pause. What were you thinking in that moment?
I generally say a small prayer to myself before I do anything in Parliament.
I love that.
People may not know, you may not notice, who would notice. I've never in Parliament given a written speech. I always speak in the moment.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. The only time I've written out a long, any kind of text is when I'm doing, like I used to practice law. So when I do a long point of order where I have to have multiple citations to page numbers in Hansard from 20 years ago, I'll write it out ahead of time. otherwise, like my question to the prime minister on Monday, if you rewatch it, I'm winging it.
Wow.
I don't, and every time before I stand up, and I don't want to sound, I mean, for people who don't have, I am a practicing Christian, but honest to God, I don't have any particular sense that there's only one right. In fact, I completely deny the notion, which is, I think, loony, that there's only one right religion, or that there's anything that you can't be an ethical, great human being and be an atheist. Obviously, and as the Green Party, we are absolutely embracing of all faiths and non-faiths. But for me, before I stand up to open my mouth, I've said a prayer and asked for help. And but sometimes I surprise myself because people don't know what I'm going to say, and neither do I. So I'm like, oh, okay. Sometimes I have to go back and watch it afterwards. What did I say? So on Monday I went back and looked at what I'd said to the prime minister, and I thought, well, that was okay. That was good. And then I was sitting there listening to him and hoping against hope that he said enough. Because by the way, the speaker is strict, and even when the prime minister is talking, if he didn't get his answer done in 35 seconds, he would have been cut off.
Right.
So it was tense. It was a nail biter moment.
Wow. For those who are listening and hearing about the difference between voting or the absenteeism that happened with some members of parliament, can you explain that difference to people? Like, why would some choose just not to vote at all? And how does that end up changing the decisions of those who are or aren't?
This is why I decided to tell the media. The minute I'd made up my mind, I went into the foyer to tell people how I was going to vote, because this is precarious, especially with the use of voting apps.
Right.
So during COVID, I mean, until COVID, there was no way for a member of parliament to vote in Canada. We're the most antiquated system in the whole Commonwealth.
Right.
Because even in the UK, you could vote without being stationary in one place, right?
Right.
So it took for Canada the COVID pandemic to develop a way to vote without being physically in Parliament. What that means is that you can't do the vote counting we used to do when you had to be physically at your seat.
Yeah.
Normally, on a budget vote, you're looking around the room. If someone is physically not present, it's shocking. They're going to miss a confidence vote. What a disaster. But with this, I mean, we had some people, as you probably noticed, we had people from the Conservative run in at the last minute and say, I'm not sure my vote counted. You had one NDPer vote yes, then vote no, then say, I'm not sure. What was happening in those moments was it was very hard to know how the vote was going to go. It was so tight, and people were hedging their bets. So why would people abstain? I can be virtually certain that their party structure apparatus whip told them to duck. Don't vote.
Okay.
Because we need, if you don't vote, you're helping us make sure we don't have an election. That's what's in their minds of the people in parties that would normally be against Carney's Liberal agenda. You would expect every Conservative to vote no. You would expect every NDPer to vote no, especially with the leadership race happening right now. But where people were abstaining was a very difficult decision, and I'm sure I felt particularly for my friend Gord Johns, who's an NDP MP, also from Vancouver Island, and a dear friend. Gord Johns was brave enough to physically be in his seat and not vote yes and not vote no, which was hard to do because he was getting booed on all sides. And I was saying, Gord, hang in. You're brave. You're brave. I knew what he was doing, and I thought, that's brave. What I did was tell the media ahead of time so that the people in those back rooms of the Conservatives, Liberals, Bloc, and NDP who are desperately trying to figure out, is this going to accidentally back us into an election we don't want? I needed them to know I was voting yes so that they would know how many people they had to have not vote. There was it's crazy city when you're trying to count up your votes and you've got people in another room who are voting on a voting app and you can't see them and you can't be sure.
For sure. God, the drama.
I know.
There's so much drama lately.
I like things when they're boring. I want a hat. I want a hat. The Canadian response to MAGA: make Canada boring
Boring
again.
again.
No,
Yeah.
please, oh
Oh
please,
my gosh.
predictable,
You know, the
happy, safe.
NDP have gotten a lot of slack for quote unquote propping up the Liberal government for many years. But what do you say to people that have come out of this week saying that you propped up the Liberal government this week? Do you think that's a
Oh
fair
yeah.
assessment?
What I did was I got something substantial through cooperation and negotiation.
Mm.
I think that's my job. There's nobody. I mean, listen,
Fair.
I've been
Yep.
as I said, I didn't join a political party till I was over 50, but now that I'm 71, it's clearly been some time that I've been in politics, and I would be an idiot to think
Mm.
that you are going to ever do anything that everybody loves what you just did.
Mhm.
So I've developed again through a lot of internal practice and faith and compassion. I love everyone, and that means I love Pierre Poilievre. He hates it that I love him, but what can you do? The other day I went up to him and I said, Pierre, you got to give me a hug. And he said,
Did he?
we said, do I have to? And I said, yeah, man, you do, because this is a tough place and we can't let, I mean, like, we don't agree on anything. That's okay. But
You've
anyway,
known him for a long
I
time, since he was a young
I've known
MP.
him since he was a little baby
Yeah.
MP. I've known him all that time since he was 24 and first got elected.
Wow.
So if you can't get along with what was, when I first got elected in 2011, 308 MPs.
Mhm.
If you're in a village of 308 people, you can imagine how icky it would be. I mean, I used to live in a village of 42 people on Cape Breton Island. If people aren't getting along, it's really bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think a village of 300, it used to be 308, it's now 343 MPs. If we can't get along, then that's bad. So yeah, people are going to say I did a bad thing, or or I'm corrupt, or I'm stupid, or naive. I mean, whatever they want to say, they can say.
Mm.
I'm just who I am, and I try to be. What you see is what you get, and I never expect people to cheer for me all the time. But I have to say, and I shouldn't say that I'm taking too much of your time, and I should, but I need you to know something.
Mm.
I'm so blessed that when I go across this country, most of the time, people recognize me, stop me to speak to me. It's to be kind.
Mm.
And that's a remarkable thing for a woman in politics after all these years to know. And I'm on my own on most travels. I don't have anyone helping me with my bags, and I'm just there. Most of the time, someone says, can I help you with your bags? I really appreciate what you do for our country. And it's so, I get choked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Me
getting choked
too.
up.
I have
Yeah, I have a lot of
goosebumps.
hugs along the way. It's really, I'm so blessed.
Ugh.
We only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to just take it from where you're at right now. You talked about this village, the village of 343. From the outside, it looks like a very dysfunctional village. It looks like a very toxic village. So I'm glad to hear that you're trying to give out some hugs. But is it as is and people ask us this all the time. Is a lot of it theatrics, or in your 14 years as a member of parliament, have you seen a difference in how members are treating each other in the House of Commons?
I'd say it is number one, more theatrics. One of my conservative friends once described it, which I thought was perfect, is, and since I don't have his permission, I won't quote him in particular, but he
Okay.
said, bad kabuki theater. For me, it's sometimes like bad high school drama, particularly when people are handed speeches they haven't written themselves, and they have to
Yeah.
stand up and read a speech that they didn't write themselves. I think it does a disservice to the place.
Mm.
But where things have gotten really toxic is the social media. That's new.
Yeah.
Mm.
The
Yes.
degree to which social media criticisms are untrue, dishonest, nasty, and I think come from bots. God knows what country they're in. They're not who we are as people. And
Right.
I have to tell you that within the House of Commons, the people within the House of Commons, we're just human beings, and we're
Yeah.
just, regardless of party, we're doing our best. We're trying really hard. The country would be better off without political parties at all,
Mm.
like they have in Nunavut, Northwest Territories, where they have consensus government. But political parties have so much entrenched power, particularly the big ones, the Liberals and Conservatives. They would never even entertain the idea of
Mm-mm.
having fair voting where every vote counts. They like the idea that there's a turn of the wheel and eventually it'll be their turn to have an unfair government with 100% of the power and
Mm.
40% of the popular vote. I mean, we're so used to it. But fairness and healthy democracy, all of that takes work. And
Mhm.
most members of parliament are people who have been in their community leaders
Yeah.
who care about doing what they best can do, whether it's municipal councillors or through their local charities, whatever. And they get elected, and the first thing they're told by their party is, "Don't speak for yourself. We'll tell you how to vote. Don't worry about
Yeah.
learning the rules. We'll tell you the rules." I've been so heartened since the election how many new MPs have come over to me and said, "Did you mean it when you sent me that note that said you'd help me with
Oh,
advice for how to set up my constituency
Wow.
office?"
That's
Because
nice.
giving good service to our constituents should be job one, but they don't get any education in it
Hmm.
because their party back rooms are all the same mindset.
Hmm.
We have to get power for power's sake. And
mm,
service to community is why these good people got elected as MPs in the first place.
Mm.
And then they're told,
mhm.
what? Check your brain at the door and do what you're told? How is that acceptable? So voters should know, go visit your MP, whether you voted for them or not. Let them know that you appreciate their service and you'd like to be able to talk to them now and then. And what's the best way for me to let you know as my MP how I hope you'll vote or considerations that you should take into account? We're just human beings, and please don't ever decide that because you're told by some horrible echo chamber online that does rage farming, don't fall into it. Don't hate anyone.
Hmm.
Don't hate the leader of another party. Please give them a break. They're just human beings.
Because you're giving them the hugs.
Yeah, well,
Well said.
I thrive
Well
on it.
said.
I love it.
Elizabeth May.
Elizabeth May, we've laughed, we've cried. This was such an amazing conversation. And thank you for reminding us that there is humanity in the House of Commons. It's really nice to hear your perspective as a very long-serving member of Parliament, as a long-serving leader of a party, and as somebody who really made a big decision this week and showed us exactly why you made that decision. So thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thanks for this conversation, and thanks to your listeners and viewers. I'm sorry I couldn't get my camera to work, but it was lovely chatting with you.
We're so thrilled to have you. Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
Can't wait. All right. We'll talk to you soon. We'll be right back.
I got other funny stories.
Oh,
Okay,
good.
bye.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.